I had been away for 3 long years. 3 years filled with dust, distant gunfire, and endless patrols in a foreign land, where every day was a fight just to stay alive. But now, finally, I was home, back in Virginia, where the scent of pine trees and fresh-cut grass hit me like a wave of memories. Stepping off the plane, I felt a mix of relief and nervous excitement. All I wanted was to see Amy and Lily, my wife and my daughter, to hold them tight and forget the nightmares that haunted me every night. The images of firefights and loss left scars beneath my skin, but the hope of coming home to them kept me going. The house looked the same, the white picket fence, the flower beds blooming outside, the porch swing creaking softly in the summer breeze. But the moment I walked inside, something didn't feel right. Amy was there, but her smile was tight. Her eyes avoided mine. Lily stayed close to her mother, quiet and distant. I tried to push the feeling aside. Maybe the years apart had created a gap we just needed to close. That first night, I shared stories from deployment, trying to bring laughter back into our home. Amy nodded politely, but rarely joined in. Her phone buzzed more times than I could count, every notification sending a jolt of unease through me. Days passed, and the warmth I longed for never came. Amy's phone was always within reach, and those secretive glances she threw at it made my heart race. At night, when the house was quiet and dark, I could hear the faint buzz of messages arriving on her phone. I fought hard to silence the doubts. I wanted to believe she had waited for me. But the space between us grew heavier, a silent wall neither of us knew how to tear down. And in that silence, I felt the first cold fingers of suspicion wrap around my heart. The days after my return blurred into one another. But one thing was clear. Something was wrong. Amy kept to herself more and more, and the warmth I remembered from before seemed to have evaporated. I watched her from across the room, trying to read the expression on her face, but it was like she was behind a glass wall I couldn't break. She spent hours on her phone, locking it away the moment I looked her way. At first, I told myself it was just habit. Maybe she was catching up with friends or managing things at work. But the way she'd quickly swipe the screen or put the phone face down whenever I entered the room made my gut twist with unease. One afternoon, I was fixing the kitchen sink when I heard her phone vibrate on the counter. I glanced over, and the message preview caught my eye. "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart froze. I tried to convince myself it was innocent, a work colleague or a friend, but the doubt had already rooted deep inside me. That night, lying awake beside her, I stole a glance at her phone sitting on the nightstand. The screen lit up with another message. "Miss you." The words stabbed at me, and I felt a cold wave of betrayal wash over my chest. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was lie there, numb and broken inside. In the following days, I noticed small things. Amy leaving the house earlier than usual, coming back late, always with an excuse ready. Lily seemed quieter too, like she was holding something back, her innocent eyes flickering with confusion whenever I asked her about her mother. I began to question everything I thought I knew about my family. Had she been waiting for me? Or had she already moved on while I was away? The fear grew like a shadow, following me in every room, poisoning my thoughts. One evening, after Amy had gone out, I found myself scrolling through her phone when it was left unattended. The messages confirmed my worst fears. Secret conversations, plans to meet, words filled with passion that didn't belong in a marriage. The pain was unbearable.
It felt like the ground beneath me crumbled. I was caught between the man I wanted to be and the reality tearing me apart. How could she do this to us? To me? That night, I sat alone in the dark, wrestling with a storm of anger, hurt, and confusion. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again.
The morning after I read those messages, I felt like I was living in someone else's skin. I went through the motions, made coffee, walked Lily to the bus stop, nodded at neighbors, but inside I was hollowed out, numb. Amy acted as if nothing had changed. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled like we were still us, and told me she had errands to run. I watched her walk out the door with the same calm stride she used every day. But now I saw it differently. I saw the lie in it, the practiced ease, the absence of guilt. I couldn't hold it in anymore, not when the truth was burning inside my chest like fire. That afternoon I sat in the garage, the only place that still felt like mine, and read through the messages again. There were weeks of them. Long text threads, emojis, private jokes, late-night confessions. She called him M, and I learned more about him than I ever wanted to. He worked with her, a coworker from the marketing department. He was funny, attentive, not afraid to talk about emotions. She told him things I hadn't heard in years. She missed his touch. She wished she could wake up next to him. She said I didn't really see her anymore, that I'd changed, that war had hardened me. I threw the phone across the garage. It hit the metal toolbox and cracked the screen. I didn't care. My fists were clenched so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. When Amy came home later that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table. I didn't say a word, just watched her drop her purse and walk toward the fridge like it was any other day. I could see the moment she noticed the tension in the room. Her body stiffened slightly, but she played it cool. "Everything okay?" she asked without turning around. I didn't answer. I just slid her phone across the table toward her. The cracked screen was still lit. The message thread was still open. She looked at it, then at me, her face drained of color. "You went through my phone?" she said. I laughed, a cold, bitter laugh that didn't even sound like my own voice. "That's what you're worried about? Not what I found?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then she sat down across from me. "Jason, don't lie to me." I cut her off. "I saw it all. Every message, every little, 'I miss you' and 'can't wait to be with you.' Was he worth it?" Silence. I could see it, the war in her face. Part of her wanted to deny it. Another part just wanted it over. She stared down at her hands. "She didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. I stood up so fast the chair fell backward. "That's bullshit, and you know it." She finally looked up at me, eyes glossy. "You were gone for years, and when you came back, you weren't the same. I felt like I was living with a ghost. He was just there when I needed someone to talk to. So you fucked him because he listened better?" That hit her. She flinched, but didn't deny it. "It started with talking, then it got complicated." I stared at her. The woman I married, the mother of my child, the person I thought I knew. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't recognize her at all. "You brought him into our lives, into Lily's world. While I was halfway around the world getting shot at so you could feel safe at night, you were here playing house with someone else." She cried then, but I didn't feel sorry, not this time. I walked out of the house that night and didn't look back. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe inside that place anymore. Everything I fought for, everything I bled for, it all felt like it meant nothing now. I drove for hours that night. No direction, no destination. Just the hum of the road and the sound of my own breathing, shallow and uneven. At some point, I pulled over at a truck stop, turned off the engine, and sat in silence with the windows cracked open. The air smelled like gasoline and old rain. My hands were still trembling, clenched on the steering wheel like I was trying to hold on to something solid in a world that had gone liquid. I stared straight ahead into the night, blinking slow, trying to process what had just happened. Not the fight, not her words or mine, but the truth that lay behind it all. Amy had moved on, while I was still fighting ghosts on the other side of the world. I had nearly died for a family that had already started grieving me in their own way. She didn't bury me, she replaced me. And I didn't know which part hurt more, the betrayal itself, or the realization that maybe she'd stopped loving me long before I ever left. I slept in the car that night. If you can call it sleep, it was more like short, haunted naps interrupted by dreams that didn't make sense, and the sharp, aching throb of adrenaline that refused to leave my bloodstream. By sunrise, I was more exhausted than when I left, but I couldn't go back. I wasn't ready to face her again. Instead, I went to a cheap motel on the edge of town and checked in without a bag, without a plan, just a name and a hollowed-out heart. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and loneliness. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me, listening to its dull, rhythmic clicking, a sound that felt more honest than anything I'd heard in weeks. The next few days blurred together. I didn't eat much, I didn't turn on the TV, I couldn't bring myself to call anyone, not my brother, not the guys I served with, not even Lily, especially not Lily. And that was what hurt the most. I missed my daughter. Her laugh, her questions, the way she used to run up to me and wrap her arms around my legs when I came home from work. But now even her smile felt distant, like it belonged to a version of my life that had been quietly erased while I was away. I kept thinking about the way she looked at me the night before I confronted Amy, quiet, unsure, almost like she knew something wasn't right but didn't have the words to say it. How long had she felt it? How long had she seen her mother sneaking around, texting in the bathroom, smiling at messages that weren't mine? Kids notice more than we give them credit for. I started to wonder if Lily had been carrying the weight of our failing marriage longer than either one of us. On the third day, Amy called. I let it ring out. She called again and finally left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear whatever excuse or apology she had prepared. But when she texted a photo of Lily sitting on the porch swing, hugging her stuffed bear and looking like she hadn't slept either, I felt something inside me crack. Not like glass, more like frozen earth starting to thaw. I texted back one word: tomorrow. The next day, I pulled into the driveway around noon. The house was still the same, but now it felt smaller, like it had shrunk under the weight of everything we'd refused to say. Amy opened the door slowly. She looked tired, makeup smudged, hair tied back lazily, eyes puffy from crying. She didn't speak, just stepped aside and let me in. Lily was in the living room, watching a cartoon on low volume, wrapped in a blanket. When she saw me, her eyes widened, and she hesitated for a moment, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to run to me anymore. I opened my arms, she flew into them. That was the moment I broke. Not during the fight, not when I read the messages, but when my daughter clung to me like I was still her whole world, like nothing had changed, even though everything had. I held her for a long time, I don't know how long, and when she finally let go, I sat down next to her and just stayed. Amy sat across the room, silent. I could feel her watching us, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Not yet. Not while the wound was still open and bleeding. She tried to speak once. I saw her open her mouth, then stop herself. I appreciated that. The silence was more honest than any apology could have been in that moment. That night, I slept on the couch. Lily begged me not to leave again, and I promised I wouldn't. It was the only promise I knew I could keep, because even if things with Amy were broken beyond repair, Lily deserved a father who stayed. The days that followed were slow, strange, and quiet, like walking through the ruins of something that once felt indestructible. I stayed on the couch, not because Amy asked me to, and not because I forgave her, but because of Lily. Every night she would come downstairs to say goodnight, and every morning she would check if I was still there. She didn't say it outright, but I could tell. She was afraid I'd disappear again. So I stayed. I got her ready for school, made her breakfast, helped her with homework like I used to. And for those few hours when it was just the two of us, it almost felt normal. Almost. But every time I passed Amy in the hallway or sat across from her at the dinner table, the air between us was thick with everything we weren't saying. The silence wasn't angry anymore. It was exhausted. She tried to make small talk a few times, asked if I was sleeping okay, told me the lawn needed mowing. I nodded, mumbled something back, but never looked her in the eyes. I didn't have the strength. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because deep down, I knew we were living in a house made of ashes. One night, after Lily had gone to bed, Amy stood in the kitchen doorway while I was washing dishes. I could feel her behind me before she spoke, the soft presence of someone rehearsing their words before letting them go. She cleared her throat. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said quietly, "but I need you to know I never wanted to hurt you." I didn't turn around. I just kept washing. "But you did." "I know. I know I did. And I'll never stop regretting it." I stood there for a long moment, letting the water run over my hands. Finally, I turned off the tap and faced her. She looked small. Not physically, but emotionally, like she was bracing for a storm. "Why him?" I asked. Not out of jealousy, out of pain, out of needing to understand what I hadn't seen. She looked down. "Because he was there. Because he listened. Because I felt invisible, and he made me feel alive for a while." That word, invisible, hit harder than I expected. I'd felt the same way overseas, surrounded by chaos, yet somehow vanishing inside it. I wasn't mad that she'd felt lost. I was mad that she didn't wait for me to come home before she gave up. We talked for a long time that night. For the first time in years, we really talked. Not about logistics or schedules or bills, about us. About who we were before the war, before the distance, before the resentment quietly took root. I listened. She cried. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Maybe the war took that from me. Or maybe she did. She told me she ended things with him, that it hadn't gone as far as it could have, that they only slept together once. I believed her, not because I trusted her, but because I didn't have the energy to question every detail. The damage was done. The specifics didn't matter anymore. I told her I didn't know what came next, that I wasn't ready to decide, that I needed time. And she nodded. She said she'd give me space, said she understood. I wasn't sure if that was true, but for the first time since I came home, we shared a moment that wasn't poisoned by anger or silence. It didn't fix anything, but it was real. And after everything, that counted for something. Over the next week, we settled into a fragile rhythm. We didn't pretend things were okay. We didn't pretend we were healing. We just existed. Two broken people sharing a roof for the sake of a child who still believed in us. One night, I tucked Lily in, and as I kissed her forehead, she looked up at me and said, "You're not going to leave again, right?" I hesitated. My throat tightened. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I promise you, I'll always be your dad. That'll never change. And that was the only truth I knew for sure. 2 weeks passed. 2 slow, heavy, deliberate weeks. I stayed in the house, in the spare room now. Amy said I didn't have to, but I needed the boundary. I needed space, even under the same roof. We weren't a couple anymore, not really. We were co-parents. 2 people organizing the same little girl who meant more to us than whatever was broken between us. We stopped trying to talk about us. There was no use anymore. We both knew what had happened, what had been lost, and neither of us had the right words to make it right. We functioned like a team, split the schedule, shared the chores, kept the house running like a machine. But I never looked at her the same. I couldn't. Something fundamental had shattered, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to pick up the pieces. Late one night, I sat on the back porch with a beer in my hand, watching the trees shift in the wind. Lily was asleep, the house was quiet, and for once my mind wasn't spinning. I thought about everything I'd given, not just to Amy, but to my country, to my unit, to a life I no longer recognized. I thought about all the things I'd lost without knowing it. And then I thought about what I still had. I still had my daughter. I still had my name. I still had a future. Maybe not the one I imagined, but something real, something mine. That next morning, I sat Amy down at the kitchen table. Her eyes told me she already knew what I was going to say, but I said it anyway. "I'm moving out." She nodded. No tears this time, just quiet acceptance. "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'll stay close. For Lily, I'll be here every day if I need to be. I just can't live here anymore." "I understand," she whispered. And for once I believed her. We didn't hug, we didn't hold hands. We just sat there, 2 people who had loved each other once, now letting go of the version of themselves that didn't survive. That weekend I packed my things, not much, just clothes, a few keepsakes, some books. Lily helped me fold shirts. She didn't ask questions, but I could tell she was watching every move I made like it mattered. When it came time to say goodbye, I knelt down in front of her. "This isn't goodbye forever," I told her. "You'll see me all the time. I'll be here for every game, every school play, every late-night story. Nothing will change that." She nodded. A brave little soldier, just like I'd raised her. Amy stood behind her, arms crossed tightly, like she was holding herself together. I looked at her one last time, not with hate, not with love, just finality. She looked away first. I closed the door behind me and stepped into the sunlight. The sky was clear, and the air smelled like cut grass in July. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time since I got home, I felt like I could finally breathe. She broke something in me I'll never fully get back, but she didn't take everything. I'm still a father. I'm still standing. And that, somehow, is enough.